Hey guys, so this is part 2 of chapter 10. I've got about 10 more slides to get through, and I think this slideshow will go a little bit faster. So let's just start with this slide here, deadly weapons. With deadly weapons, we want to look at the fact that a deadly weapon has been used. In short, what that means is whenever you can have assault or you can have aggravated assault, and one of those things that takes it to the next level is the presence of a weapon or the use of a weapon. So proof of intent with deadly weapons is pretty self-explanatory. What it means is that if you have a loaded revolver and you point it at someone, you are the inference that can be drawn from that is that you intended to hurt or kill. You don't typically shoot someone just to scare them, right? You shoot them to kill them. So, when we look at deadly weapons, a jury considers who used it, how it was used, and what the purpose was behind that. I gave the example of a revolver, but there have been times in which a judge or a jury has determined that a cowboy boot that was used to stomp someone's head has been a deadly weapon. A floor has been used when a defendant has been when he struck an infant's head to the floor. An automobile used to run down a victim of a robbery attempt, and a nail gun when used to threaten robbery victims. Those have all been determined to be deadly weapons, and depending upon the intent in which they were using it. So, in short, what this slide is just saying that a deadly weapon doctrine just means that the law presumes one intends the probable consequences if they're using a deadly weapon. If you shoot someone, you are, the intent to kill them was there. If you beat somebody's head to the floor and they die, it's a deadly weapon and the intent was murder. All right. Transferred intent, this is a lot of writing for simply what it means is that, let's say that you have A intends to shoot B, but misses and shoots C instead, and C passes away. A is guilty of intent to kill, murder of C. It just means that intent can be transferred. So if you're trying to hurt someone else, if you're trying to hurt, person number one, but in doing so you mess up and you hurt person number two instead, just because you didn't intend to hurt that person number two, you can say, oh, that's not who I intended to kill. I intended to kill this other person. So premeditation isn't there. The law does not work that way. You intended to hurt someone, you intended to kill someone, and so that transferred intent is there. By definition, it's just a doctrine when the intention to harm one individual inadvertently causes a second person to be hurt instead. The individual causing the harm will be seen as having intended the act by means of the transferred intent doctrine. Serious bodily harm and depraved heart murder. Even without the intent to cause death, actions that result in death can constitute murder if the actor intended to cause serious bodily harm such that death would be a likely result. So what this means is that if someone is acting in a way which is likely to cause serious bodily harm, and someone dies in the process, then it could reach that level of murder depending upon the state. Not every state has a statute that includes a serious bodily harm, but many do. So let's see. Don't think there's anything else. I'm just looking at my notes. I don't think there's anything else that I really need to know from this slide. Felony murder. If you watched the first video, then you heard me refer to felony murder rule in the first video. But if you didn't, or if you need a reminder, what this just means is that somebody was committing an underlying felony. So the example, A holds the gun while robbing a bank. The gun accidentally discharges, killing B, a bank teller. Though A did not intend B's death, the intent to rob the bank supplies that intent. So, in the commission of a felony, if you were to kill someone, let's say you were committing a felony, whatever it is, and you were engaging in this felonious act and somebody dies, you can be charged with felony murder because although you did not have the intent and although it could be, quote, an accident, the felony is going to take the place of that intent. I hope I'm explaining that clearly. This might be one of those topics that if I'm asking, let me know if I'm not making sense here. Also, right now, I didn't put this at the beginning of the video. It's going to be easier probably for you, as unpopular as it may be, to actually read through these chapters, to read through the points that I'm trying to hit on a little bit. Because we just don't have that face-to-face interaction, and what I'm lacking right now is being able to read your face to see if you can understand this. So I want you to be vigilant, and I want you to tell me when I'm not explaining something. But essentially, just know that in the commission of a felony, if somebody dies, it can be charged as a murder rather than, an accident, or, sometimes car accidents happen and somebody doesn't necessarily get charged for the death of that individual. Okay. This is just the continuation. Another example, A and B rob a bank the next day. The police approach B to arrest him, and B shoots and kills a policeman. Neither A or B can be convicted of felony murder, though. B can be convicted of intent to kill because he used a deadly weapon. It just means that for the felony murder rule to attach, it has to be right then. It cannot be that there cannot be a break or a lag. This all has to be playing out at the same time. Can't sleep on it and then attach the felony murder to in this example, A, because even though A and B robbed the bank together, the death of the police officer is solely on B's shoulders, and A was not involved. Co-felons. Co-felons, all persons committing a designated felony are liable for felony murders of that result. And death caused by third parties in many states can be attributed to the perpetrators of the felony. Okay, so manslaughter. Manslaughter is really just a lesser degree of murder. Manslaughter, by definition, criminal homicides other than murder. Most states provide for 2 degrees of manslaughter: voluntary and involuntary. So it is causing the death of another individual, but this is where we have to look at the situation and exactly how it happened, or if there is some sort of explanation or lack of premeditation that may lead to manslaughter. So voluntary or first-degree manslaughter is similar to murder in that it requires proof of intent to kill, but there's also, when we talk about reasons for manslaughter rather than murder, it might be that the victim had provoked the killing, or his or her unlawful conduct set into motion a chain of events that resulted. So meaning that maybe there was a fight between the two, but the victim was a participant in the actual wrongdoing that resulted in death. The killings are not bad enough to be charged as murder, but the criminal conduct should be punished. Or in some cases, a jury cannot unanimously agree on the finding of murder, and a compromise is had on a manslaughter charge. So these next 2 slides we'll go over pretty quickly, but when you provoke someone, as we were just talking about in the previous slide, the killing must be such that a reasonable person would lose self-control. Example, killing one who attacks with a deadly weapon is both reasonable and justified. Killing one who attacks with a less deadly force, while it might cause a reasonable person to lose self-control, is not justified. The easiest example I can come up with off the top of my head is when we talk about the woman who shot a man in the back because he was trying to steal her purse. Her life truly wasn't threatened, and in fact her purse is really one of those things that robbery, things like that, larceny, those aren't really death-worthy responses, or your response with death is not necessarily justified. With her, she was in a different situation because she lived in Texas and she was a female, and you can get away with a lot when it comes to a gun in different states. But in a real, like, stepping back, looking at that case, she wasn't, she was provoked. I'm just not 100% for sure if she was provoked to that level. And of course, you can agree or disagree, but that's an example of like provocation or being provoked into a possible manslaughter case. Cooling off is important because when we look at murder and manslaughter, we look at the time in which they had to cool off or to actually calm down. If there's a cooling off period, then everything changes and it goes from a manslaughter to possibly a murder. For a manslaughter, it really needs to be in the heat of the moment. If not, we might be bordering back on premeditated murder. Imperfect self-defense or necessity. Perfect self-defense causing the death is justified and not a crime. For that to happen, they must be free of fault in causing the confrontation, meaning they're not the one who started the fight, and B, deadly force must be reasonable. If either are not proved, then it might be imperfect, and that might result in a manslaughter charge. If coercion is never a defense into taking another person's life, circumstances in many states and statutes reduce that crime to manslaughter. So if it is less than perfect, when you're talking about self-defense, it could be a manslaughter charge. Involuntary manslaughter. No intent to kill, but the death occurs because of the lawful acts. What this means is that somebody engaged in a reckless manner, or they were negligent in some form or fashion. And because of that, the intent to kill is not there. However, the death does result. And that wrongdoing is to a level that it's outside of what we would consider like an accident, or, wrong place, wrong time, but rather something that we want to punish by criminal punishment. So involuntary manslaughter is still the death of another person. It's just you didn't intend to kill somebody. Involuntary manslaughter is sometimes called unintentional or an unlawful act manslaughter. And what this means is just somebody's charged with extreme negligence or wanton or reckless conduct by the defendant and brings in unintended or accidental death. A couple examples here were extreme negligence and failure to act. A Virginia man was convicted of involuntary manslaughter when he left his 2-year-old daughter in the car for 7 hours. Reckless conduct. A congressman from South Dakota with a history of careless driving was convicted of involuntary manslaughter when traveling 16 miles per hour over the speed limit. He ran a stop sign and struck and killed a motorist. Many states have an actual vehicular manslaughter, vehicular homicide, which may fall more into that last example there. But there are, in 2004, an 87-year-old man slammed his car into a Santa Monica, California farmer's market, killing 10 people and injuring 63 others. He was charged with 10 counts of violating the California vehicular manslaughter law. So, one more slide and then we are done. Suicide. Suicide by common law is a crime. Essentially what it means is you've killed somebody, you've killed yourself, but it used to be punished by, by common law, if somebody were to commit suicide, the punishment was that their money that they had would actually go to the king and not the family. But when we talk about suicide, in which we will spend much more time talking about this, I want you to consider assisted suicide, which is somebody helping somebody die because they're sick or they're in pain, and death with dignity laws that have started to appear in the United States. So please watch over this and let me know if you have any questions. Make note, and when we meet live, we will talk about it. Thanks.